What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another very exciting episode of Untamed Outdoorsmen. And today we are back in the native Watercraft Titan X 12.5 build series, bringing you probably the biggest episode in that entire build series by far. We've done over 20 episodes of that build series, and in terms of scale, I think this one is the biggest. And today we are back with the Garmin Force Current kayak trolling motor. This thing, I am so excited to have this thing in this garage right now. I am so unbelievably happy and excited to install this for you guys on video, to go really in depth on the installation, to show you not only how to install it professionally, but to install it safely. I am super excited. This thing is an amazing little piece of technology. I'm really looking forward to having this on the channel and trying it out in the spring. It's really great that companies like Garmin are making specific products for kayaking and kayakers in general. I think that's a great step in the right direction for the industry, and I am super excited to have this thing and installing it with you guys on camera. So really excited. How this video is going to go. We got a couple of things we got to do. When I'm done talking about the video structure, we are going to talk briefly about some just general disclaimers I need to talk about kind of before we get into the video. We'll talk about those relatively quickly. We're going to unbox this, going to go pretty in depth on the unboxing. We're going to install it on the Titan X 12.5. We're going to show how to hook everything up, how to pair all of the electronics that come with this. This is also with the foot pedals. We are going to be hooking up all the raise and lower lines, and most importantly, we're going to be showing you how to safely do the electrical work that is necessary for this motor. There's a lot of misinformation floating around on this installation when it comes to the electrical work on it. And we're going to hopefully get all of that solved today. So yeah, guys, super excited. This is probably going to be a much longer video than average for us because I really wanted to take my time and go really in depth on this motor. So yeah, let's get to the next part of this video. Okay, so now that we just did the intro, I did want to talk briefly to kind of discuss some general disclaimers with this video, and to kind of address the elephant in the room on a lot of different topics surrounding this motor. I do have 4 things I need to talk about very quickly here, and then we'll get to the rest of the video. Number 1, I completely understand that this motor is not for everybody. This is definitely not a motor that is marketed towards everybody. You know, if this motor is not for you or it doesn't fit your situation, I completely understand and I hear you. In my opinion, the glory of this sport and what makes kayak fishing such a great side of the fishing world is that we all have a choice. If you decide that you don't want to do this, more power to you. There's nothing wrong with that. If you decide that you want to buy this motor, more power to you. Nothing wrong with that either. The glory of this sport is that we all have a choice and we all have a different definition of what is fun. What works for me may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for me. It doesn't mean anybody's wrong. All it means is we all have a difference in opinion and we all have a difference in what we consider fun for our boats. Everybody is coming at this from a different situation and perspective. So I do think it's important to understand that, you know, everybody's different. Everybody has different definitions of what they enjoy and different definitions of what they want to get for their fishing vessels. So it's very important to understand that context, because I see a lot of people that get really bent out of shape over the fact that this motor even exists. And you know, like I said, the glory of the sport is we all have a choice. So that's important. Number 2, and kind of piggybacking on number 1, I completely understand that there is a level of sticker shock with this motor. I'm not going to shy away from that fact at all. This motor with the foot pedals and no battery retails for $3,600. I completely get that that is not for everybody, and it may not be for you, and that's completely okay. There is nothing wrong with that. And I totally understand that there will probably be people that have already wrote this motor off completely. I can't do anything to change that fact, and that's totally fine. Everybody's different. I understand that the initial sticker shock is there, but I do think it is important to understand the context of that when you factor in where the current advanced side of kayak fishing is and how this motor stacks up to other motors on the market. So, for example, this motor is definitely marketed towards the more advanced side of kayak anglers. Tournament anglers, advanced level kayak anglers. This is not an everyday product for sure. And I think they've made that pretty clear with their marketing as well. And with a lot of kayak fishing tournaments, a lot of kayak tournaments do not allow dual motors. And this motor essentially gives you the benefits of a bow mount and the benefits of a stern mount like Newport NK 180 or a Minn Kota Tarova bow mount. It gives you those best of both worlds. It gives you the power of an NK 180 and the features of a bow mounted spot lock motor. So a lot of people are wanting those bow and stern motors on their kayaks together. And if they want to fish tournaments, that's not allowed. So while it is a very hyper-specific category of people who see the value in this, I do believe there is a situation where this makes sense. And that's definitely not everybody. It may not be for you, and that's okay. You know, in my case, we had the means to do so, and I was looking for an upgrade anyway, and I figured what a great opportunity to make a fun video. So yeah, number 3, you are responsible for your own build. It is on you to have the proper knowledge, skill set, and tools to be able to tackle a project like this. I can show you how I plan on doing it to a Native Titan X 12.5. I am going to do it in a very professional and, more importantly, a very safe manner. But every installation is different. Every motor is different, every kayak is different, and every single situation warrants a different approach. And the installation that we do here and the accessories that we use is not universal. So it is on you to do that proper type of research and make those safe judgment calls for yourself. You know, in case any of you are curious, I do have a professional background in these type of electronics. But with that being said, I am not your marine electronics installer and I am not your marine electrician. So I think that's very important things to discuss here. And number 4, this channel is not sponsored or affiliated with Garmin in any capacity. This channel is not being paid to say anything, being paid to do anything. There is no sponsorship or affiliation here whatsoever. I paid my own money for this motor, so making that abundantly clear. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, tried to make that as fast as possible, let's unbox this bad boy. All right, here we go, guys. Let's unbox this bad boy. Super excited here. This thing is probably the coolest thing we've ever had on the channel. So let's get this thing unboxed here. And we also have some other accessories that we'll talk about briefly as well that are pretty important to this install because you need more than just the motor. All right, got a lot here to unpack. So let's start. We have all of our manuals and guides here. I do recommend hanging on to these. That is pretty important. First thing in here, let's see. Okay, so this is our MOB tag. So this is essentially a wireless kill switch. If this device gets submerged in water, this essentially acts like a kill switch and kills your motor. So if you were to fall in, if anything like that, you are protected. This is essentially your kill switch. It's wireless completely, and it is battery powered. So we have 2 options for mounting here. We have a carabiner style, which we'll probably end up using, and we have a rubbery watch wristband. So you can choose whichever one works better for you. And we also have a key float, which we will probably end up using as well. But anyway, this is our kill switch, or MOB tag, whatever you want to call it. We'll put that off to the side. We have our high efficiency prop and our mounting hardware. So you have 2 options for a prop on this, and you get both. You have a weedless prop and you have a high efficiency prop. In our situation, I'm not going for top speed on this motor. It's just that's never been how I've wanted to kayak. So we will be using the weedless prop because we have a lot of ponds in our area that are heavy with vegetation. So that weedless prop is going to come in handy. But this is our high efficiency prop here. And we have our weedless prop as well right there. So we have both props. We'll take a look at those later on in the video. This has some hardware in it. Let's open this guy up. This feels like it might be our wire. Yes, it is. So this is our wire here. So this is 8-gauge marine grade wire. We will be replacing these terminals with some different terminals. So we will be cutting these, but this is 8-gauge marine grade wire. This is for our actual plug to plug into either a breaker or to a plug, whatever you want to plug it into, as long as there's overcurrent protection. But this is 8-gauge marine grade wire, and we will be cutting these terminals. And this is the side that plugs into the Garmin. So we have that. Anything else here? We have more packing. This is our base that we'll be attaching to the motor. We have some more accessories that we'll dive into in a second here, but we have this. This is what the Garmin motor rests on to attach to your kayak. We got a little bit more to this that we'll talk about in a second, but yeah, super hefty, super heavy duty. I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is metal. So this is no joke. This is not plastic, this is actual metal. So this is super cool. We have our foot controls, our left foot control and our right foot control. We'll unbox these later on in the video, but we do have our foot controls here. I don't think we have anything else in this box, but the star of the show here, the Garmin Force Current. This thing is incredible. Got the nice Garmin logo right there. This thing is nice. You got your plug, you got your attachments to attach to the kayak, you got your resting spots, got your lower unit, you got your tightening collar. We'll tighten that up later. Got a nice beefy handlebar here. You have the area to run your lines. Wow, this thing is incredible. And it's not overly heavy either. I would say it's a little bit lighter than the Motor Guide XI3 that we had. So this thing is awesome. And it looks like we've got one more box actually. So let's unbox this quick. Let's take a look and see what's in here. This is our motor remote. So we have options for both. We have the foot pedals or we have the remote, whichever one we choose to use in that given moment. And we got some miscellaneous stuff here. So we have some hardware. We've got a lanyard. We have stuff for the raise and lower lines. We have a remote holder. And we have our guard that goes on the lower unit here with the Allen key as well. So we've got a lot to do in this video, guys. This will be a pretty long video, but I'll section it out for you. So if you need to see a certain thing, you can just check that out. But we've got a lot to do. We are going to head over to the kayak now. We're going to get all this stuff over to the other side of the garage and let's get started. All right, so we do have little miscellaneous accessories that we will need to complete this installation. We have a mount for this specific use case. So yes, I know it says the Bonafide logo on it, but Bonafide, PWR, XTR, possibly the new Hammer, and Titan X all use the same mounting pattern back here for these type of motors. This just adds some extra strength to the hull and just prevents any risk of long-term issue from all the torque going in and out of the motor. So something to consider. You know, some people are not putting this on, some people are putting this on. I just figured if we've spent that money on the motor, might as well just spend a little bit more and get a good mount for it. So we got that. All right, everybody, so let's get started on the installation. So first thing we have to do is we have to get this motor physically on the kayak. We can't really do anything else until we get this thing physically installed. So we have a few things we need to do here. We will need the motor mount from Big Adventures. I know it's got the Bonafide logo on it, but it works for both kayaks. This is kind of what gives you a little bit extra rigidity on the hull to survive long-term or minimize the risk of any issue long-term. So this does come with a very thick base here that lines up perfectly to the screw holes right here. And we also have some hardware as well that they provided for us. So we're going to get this bad boy installed. So let's undo these screws. Oh, that just fell. Okay, now we're going to get this guy lined up here. All right, that lines up good. The holes are widened and they're recessed a little bit, and these holes actually line up perfectly with this mount. So that's even better. That's awesome. Okay, so all these line up perfectly. No worries there. So we're going to take our long screws, just put those guys in. Perfect. And you want to just get them started. You don't want to really torque them down yet, because if you torque one down, you're not going to be able to get the others on as easily. So you want to just get them on, get the threads started, and then once you get all four down, then we can really socket. So one thing too, you don't want to use like impacts or anything on this. Just use hand tools, because if you use an impact, you know, these screws are held in by brass inserts. It's not just going right into plastic. But if you use an impact or anything, you may run into issues with damage. So just use hand tools, because you don't really need anything more than that. Get them as far as you can with just basic hand tools. All right, so now that we got all four screwed down, I am going to really torque them down in a cross pattern. Don't do them clockwise or counterclockwise to the best of your abilities. Just All right, so that's secured on there. There is no flexing or moving whatsoever there. So I'm gonna call that good in terms of the actual mounting bracket. So what we can do is we can throw this force current physically on the boat, and we can kind of mock up how it looks, and we can kind of do the rest of our installation from there now that we have the motor physically on. So that's great. Let's get this motor physically put on. All right, everybody. So we got the main motor here. Let's give this a rough mock up. Let's see how it looks. Already pretty cool. So mind you, this is not, we still have to put the pins in and everything, so this is not how it looks when it's fully mounted, but that is so cool. It looks really natural there. I'll admit it doesn't look super ridiculous, doesn't look super out of place in my opinion. This is a really sleek looking motor and I'm really happy with this. So we got a long way to go in this install. Right now though, this looks really, really cool. We still got to do a bunch of other things to this, so we are far from done, but just to see how it looks right now and how it sits currently is awesome. So yeah, guys, let's keep going, buddy. So we have already kind of run into our first little predicament here. And I'm kind of surprised I didn't put it together previously, but here we are. We do have a solution for it, but I did want to explain it just so you guys know ahead of time. So I don't know if you guys can see the issue here already. This motor has 3 mounting options. There's 3 little holes there. You guys can probably see it. 3 little holes there that this pin goes through that you can mount it. You got closest position, medium position, and the furthest away position. Those are rough ideas. The problem is when you turn this motor the whole other way, you won't be able to clear the prop and the rudder. The prop on this motor is going to hit the rudder. And if you put it on the 3rd position like this, it will clear the rudder, but this is way too sharp of an angle here for this motor. This motor is supposed to be completely straight, and this much of an angle would just be a little too much. So what we're gonna do, and I probably took a half an hour or so and thought about a plan for this, because we are installing the foot pedals, the Garmin foot pedals for this motor, we are going to be removing the rudder. Now, I understand that that might be a little aggressive for some to remove the rudder. In my opinion, if you are getting the Garmin pedals to go with this motor, you pretty much have to sacrifice the pedal drive to do so, because you're basically going to have 2 sets of pedals right there, and to be able to spin the pedal drive freely with your feet being able to move the pedals on the pedal drive with having both pedals for the Garmin motor, I don't think that's going to work. So if you want to buy this Garmin motor and you still want to retain the pedal drive unit on this kayak, I recommend buying the force current without the foot pedals. If you are willing to move on from the pedal drive, I recommend buying the foot pedals with this kayak. So with that being said, using the pedal drive while also having the pedals there is just not going to be practical for me. So we really have no use for this rudder anymore. So I am going to be removing just the rudder to accommodate the easier mounting spot on this motor. So yeah, did not expect to have to come to that. I didn't even think about it beforehand. You know, definitely something to think about for sure. If you want to get the Garmin force pedals, you're probably gonna have to sacrifice the rudder along with the pedal drive. So keep that in mind. But if you want to retain the pedal drive and the rudder, you'll have to get the force current without the foot pedals, and you'll have to have it in the 3rd position like this. But since I want to have it in this position here, and unfortunately we have to get rid of this rudder. So I'm okay with that principle. I understand it. With the Garmin foot pedals being up where the pedal drive would be, the pedal drive would be very impractical. So I'm okay with the principle of this. So we're gonna remove the rudder and we'll move on. I'm just going to put the pin, actually I'll show you guys a better angle, in the first mounting hole. Okay, and then we got this pin here. Is going to install the pin. Okay. All right, we are installed in the proper mounting spot. Now we're just gonna remove the rudder quick, not a huge deal. And yeah, we'll keep moving. that's fine. Again, you do have options. All right. Bye-bye, rudder. All right, everybody. So now, next up, we are going to throw our prop on. You will need a few tools for this if you want to do it the right way, but we are going to put the rudder on. So first, we are going to need this pin. Pin goes right through there, as close as you can to the middle, like with it even, just like that. Then we're going to put our prop on. This is the weedless prop. That is on. Now we have a few different things here. So first up, we have this is our zinc or our sacrificial anode, whatever, people call it different things. This is essentially a sacrifice. You know, this zinc is going to protect all of the internals of this motor in a harsh saltwater environment if you do saltwater. So I think you should install it nonetheless just for that protection, but this does act as a sacrifice to protect this. So that zinc will wear out, but it will protect your unit. So just plan on that. Zincs are sacrificial. So now we are going to actually need a torque wrench. All right, so again, you will need a torque wrench here. So we have to torque this down to 12 foot-pounds. So there's plenty of videos online on how to use a torque wrench. I'm not gonna fully go in depth on that here, but all right, we have this set to 12. So now this is a 9/16 socket. So hold that down and I'm gonna torque this bad boy down. All right, that's 12 foot-pounds. So that's good. And we are almost done with the motor. Now we have to put on our little skeg. All right, everybody, so the skeg is super easy to put on. You do get a supplied Allen key. You get the skeg. This is a replaceable skeg, so if you destroy it on rocks and stuff, you can just easily replace it. And we have a 3mm hex bolt here and a washer. So, pretty easy. Just, floop. Yep. It's kind of keyed, so you have to put it in like that. Now, I don't think there's a torque spec on this. There was a little bit of blue Loctite on it, so it doesn't come out. But, yeah, just 3mm hex. I would say just good and snug is fine for this guy. I don't think the directions specified anything else, but I do like that this is replaceable because skegs just get eaten alive on kayaks because we're just always in really difficult waters with a lot of rocks and structures and stuff. So it's nice that they made that replaceable. I like that. Okay, now we're on to the next part of the build. Okay, so now we have this motor physically put on the boat. This isn't completely ready to go, but we do have everything handled on the actual motor itself. We have it mounted. We have the mounting plate from Native put on. We have Garmin's plate. We have our motor itself. We have our pin for the positioning. We have our prop. We have our skeg. We have everything on the actual motor, I believe, is done. So now we're going to work on the wiring and the electrical work. I do want to spend a good amount of time on that. And then after that, we're going to work on everything else. So that's going to include the lines. It's going to include the foot pedals. It's going to include the remote, all of that. So yeah, let's continue. Okay, so like I said, now that we got the motor installed, now it's time to move on to all the electrical work for this motor. So I'm just gonna be completely honest with you guys, and I've talked to multiple people about this in the kayaking world, some somewhat higher names, and it's a pretty unanimous feeling. In my experience, I have seen a lot of misinformation and some really bad practices when it comes to electrical work on kayaks in particular. I've seen a lot of things, whether it be social media, blogs, things like that. I've seen a lot of issues and I've seen a lot of poor practice. There is a lot of misinformation out there. So just to be completely frank with you guys on that one, we're going to be talking about the wire that we have and we're going to be talking about overcurrent protection before we start installing it. So in terms of wire, this is what we have here for wire. This is some of the leftover stuff that we have in the garage already from previous bow mount motor builds. So the wire that we're going to be using for this build inside the hull is duplex marine rated tinned copper wire. So this is 6-gauge wire. Duplex coating is this white coating that goes over both the wires. This is just a waterproof and weatherproof barrier to even further protect these wires. I highly recommend that kind of wire inside the hull. Kayaks are moisture heavy environments. They're going to see a lot of moisture, and in rare circumstances, they may get submerged in water. So having this coating on there does make a difference. So I highly recommend it. And in my opinion, something that's mandatory is tinned copper marine rated wire. Do not buy pure copper wire for this. Buy tinned copper. Tinned copper has the same conductivity as pure copper. There's no loss in conductivity, but the tinned copper does extremely well against long-term corrosion buildup, which in extreme cases can lead to heat on the wires, melting of contacts. You know, all of those things can happen. So I highly recommend duplex coated tinned copper in the properly sized wire gauge. So moving on to wire gauge here. So we have 6 gauge wire here. Now, 6 gauge is just what I had in the house from previous builds. In terms of what the right wire gauge size is, the right answer is that there is no right answer. We have 6 gauge for this installation. This is adequate for this situation. It's actually more than adequate for this situation. It might be a little overkill, but there is no right size, and I am not going to tell you what the right wire gauge size is. The best advice that I can give you is to consult ABYC certified wire gauge calculators. That's your best bet, because there may be situations where a slightly larger wire gauge is warranted. You know, there are certain things that go into that equation that do matter. So every situation is different. We're using 6 gauge for this because it's what I had here, and this is plenty adequate, and it's somewhat oversized for this application, but again, I can't tell you what the right wire gauge is. It is on you to figure that out, because there is no universal wire gauge size. It all depends on your situation and your distance from the battery. So keep that in mind. So we have this. This is our wire gauge, 6 gauge. We also have some miscellaneous red wire. We'll get a little more into why we're using this later. And now we're going to talk about probably the most important part of this build, and that is overcurrent protection. Breakers are non-negotiable safety requirements. If you do not have a breaker, you immediately create a dangerous install for you, your gear, and the people around you. So this is the circuit breaker that we have here. This is the Blue Sea Systems 50 amp circuit breaker. Blue Sea Systems is a name that I trust when it comes to overcurrent protection. This is a name brand. This is a known good company. I trust these very much. Okay, so when it comes to sizing breakers, there are 2 schools of thought. Number 1 is the manual. So this is what the manual tells us. Breaker, not included, by the way. 32 volts DC or greater, suitable for 40 amp continuous. And they have a note here. It says you can protect the system by using a larger circuit breaker, not to exceed 60 amps. So that is what the manual says right there. The proper procedure when it comes to sizing circuit breakers, according to ABYC, which is the American Boat and Yacht Council, basically the official rule book for all things marine electrical, when it comes to sizing overcurrent protection, you should always size it according to 125% of the maximum load. Amperage on the manual is 40 amps continuous. That is the max amount of amperage that this motor will draw at one time. So 125% of 40 is 50 amp breaker. And in the manual here, the breaker has to be able to carry 40 amps, but not be more than 60. So 50 amps is perfect. That's right in the middle. So 125% of 40 is 50, 40 amps continuous, max of 60 on the manual. Right in the middle is 50. So all of those numbers line up perfectly. That is the size that we're going to be running, and that is why I believe it is the best size. Now, you might be asking, why not just run a 40 amp breaker? You probably could run a 40 amp breaker. The issue with that is that's extremely close to the max of what that breaker can carry. So if I ran a 40 amp breaker on this, it would probably work, but the issue might be is we may run into nuisance tripping issues where the breaker trips when it doesn't need to trip because the amperage rating is way too close to the max output of the motor. It will either nuisance trip, meaning it trips when it doesn't need to trip, or the breaker is going to get warmer than it needs to get because you're right at the max of what that breaker is capable of running at. So with all that being said, I firmly believe 50 amp is the correct size for this application. So that's that. We have some heat shrink. This is 3/8 heat shrink. We had plenty in the garage, but I got some specifically for this installation. This is 3/8 inch heat shrink, 3-to-1 ratio adhesive lined heat shrink. Do not buy any of that 2-to-1 stuff. Only buy the adhesive lined marine grade 3-to-1 heat shrink. This stuff's awesome. So, and we got some in red and black. So that's great. We got the Garmin side of the wire here. Like I said earlier, we are going to be cutting these leads and replacing them with 8-gauge tinned copper wire with a 1/4-inch ring. And the reason we're doing 1/4-inch ring is it's compatible with our trolling motor plug through this power link plate. So that's the rundown of the actual gear itself. Now we're going to begin the installation. Okay, everybody, so it's a new day and we are back beginning the wiring. So what is our plan for the wiring? Our plan is obviously to get power to the motor. So obviously, what we have to do is we have to get our circuit breaker installed within 7 inches of the battery on the positive side. That's the ABYC requirement, is to be within 7 inches. Best practice is to have the breaker as close to the battery as humanly possible. So in this scenario, what we're going to do is we are going to make a very small wire, no more than 1 inch or 2, on top of the battery. We are going to take our breaker, we're going to mount it to the top of the battery with our 3M dual lock Velcro. I highly recommend this kind of Velcro. This stuff is a night and day difference between normal Velcro. So we're going to do that. We're going to get our breaker to be on top of the battery, and I already did test fit it, and it fits perfectly fine with this bow hatch. So that's perfectly fine. Then we're going to run our 6-gauge wire through the boat to this back power link plate, which will go to the battery tender. Then the battery tender will go to the battery. So we're going to begin right now. We'll grab all of our tools for that and we'll begin. Okay, so we have some crimpers here. I'll leave a link in the description for all these tools, but we got crimpers, we got wire strippers. We have a different type of wire stripper here. We're just using these to cut the wire. We have to create a small little jumper to go from the battery to the breaker. So I'm going to take our breaker out of the box. And a good reason why I like these Blue Sea Systems breakers is because this is perfectly flat underneath the breaker. A lot of other breakers, they're raised up in certain spots, but this is completely flat, so it's great for putting Velcro. So now we need a tiny little piece of wire. So we are going to basically just cut it right there. Okay. So we got a little piece, and we're gonna go over to the workbench and we're going to strip and crimp this wire together. All right, so we have our little piece here. This is gonna go from our battery to our breaker. This is 6-gauge marine rated tinned copper wire. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna put it right in the stripper. I'm gonna rotate it around. And look at that, cuts it perfectly. The 5/16 ring is gonna go to the battery. The 1/4-inch ring is gonna go to the breaker. Now we're gonna grab our crimper. Make sure it's set to 6-gauge. We're gonna crimp this bad boy down. And this crimper in particular, I like to do 2 crimps on it, but some crimpers you may only need to do 1. Crimp number 1, let's crimp number 2. All right, so as you can see, that's a good crimp. One thing you want to do is pull on this as hard as you possibly can. Give this as much strength as you can to try and pull this off. If you can't pull it off, you're good. I see a lot of people talk about soldering and how you need to solder these connections. I don't like soldering on kayaks. The reason being is because vibration and metal fatigue is a real issue with soldering. You know, connections tend to break or cause no movement for the wires to move freely when needed. You know, soldering is not always good. So I know some people are very adamant on soldering, and if you are going to solder, do not make that the only form of connection. Crimp and solder if you're adamant on soldering, but I'm not a personal fan of soldering on kayaks. The more an item moves, the less likely I am to solder, and kayaks see a lot of movement and a lot of vibration, whether it's on the water or on the road. That's debatably worse, so yeah, just be mindful. But okay, so we got this guy crimped on one side, and now we have to crimp it on the other side. What I'm going to do is they're going to be opposing sides. So this side is going to be facing down, this side is going to be facing up. Reason being is because the breaker, the post on the breaker is slightly raised up, so we have to accommodate for that. And having it facing down like that is going to raise it up just slightly, and it'll be perfect. So opposing sides. All right, so we are all crimped on. No biggie, did a double crimp, and this looks good. It did kind of pop out on the side, but that's no big deal. But yeah, we are good to go. All these connections are tight. Pulling as hard as I can. We're going to grab our heat shrink now. All right, so we have our 3/8 heat shrink in red. I'm just gonna cut off the closed end, just like that. So I'm gonna take a rough idea. I'm actually gonna wrap this whole thing in heat shrink. Reason being is just because it makes more sense to do that as opposed to doing two separate pieces of heat shrink. This is perfectly fine just like that. So now we're gonna take our heat gun, plug it in. In terms of shrinking down heat shrink, I highly recommend a corded heat gun. That's the best choice. Blow torches will work if you have them available. And that's the only thing you have. Sure, they will work, but they have a tendency to burn the heat shrink, which you don't want to do. So heat shrink, we're gonna get this guy cranked. Okay, so this is done. I just have my tool on it because the copper is gonna get pretty hot from that. But yeah, we're good to go and we'll get this put on. Okay, so we have our piece. I did make another piece that's a little bit smaller just for the sake of this installation. And this will actually work even better. So that's awesome. So a good practice as well is put your heaviest amp draw loads at the bottom of the post and then your smaller amp draw loads at the top of the post. That's just best practice is to follow that. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We have three things that go on this positive terminal. So there we go. I'm just going to get it loose for now because I know we're going to have to tighten it up. Okay, so now we're going to remove our post on the breaker. This is a 10mm wrench for this, or socket, whatever you want to use for this. I'll probably end up switching to a socket in a second here. It will basically just look like that. So that's only like an inch away from the battery, which is exactly what we want. So now I am going to take our 3M dual lock Velcro. Those of you who don't know what 3M dual lock is, normal Velcro, you have a hard side and a soft side with Velcro. This is just two hard sides of Velcro and they kind of like grab each other. This stuff is excellent. We use this stuff on boats pretty frequently and it's never really let us down. So I'm a fan and I recommend it. I am going to make two pieces and we'll get right back to you. Excellent. And this stuff sticks really, really good. So no concern there. Okay, so that is on. And then we'll tighten it down. All right, so that is on, and then just to confirm we don't have any issues with this lid, with the breaker sitting up there, let's put this guy on. We're good. So that fits no problem. No concern there. And then just for the sake of safety, I'm gonna trip the breaker so nothing we work on is live. Next up now, we have to run our duplex wire from our positive post on the breaker and our negative post off the shunt, which this basically just serves as our negative from here on out because this is a Bluetooth shunt. Negative side of the shunt, back end of the breaker to our power link plate right there. So I'll show you briefly how to cut duplex wire and then we'll continue. Okay, so we have our 6-gauge marine grade duplex coated wire here. In case you don't know, the duplex coating is you have your negative and you have your positive wires and they're just wrapped together in this thick white coating to protect it from water. So we have to cut this white coating to expose the red and the black wires so we can make our connections. The way that I do it here I found is the safest way and the way that protects the wire the best, but there may be other ways to do it. This is just the way that I found that works for me. So we're going to take a razor blade and we're going to feel for the dead middle of this duplex. You'll feel a little bit of a bump that signifies the middle. So we're going to find that as close to the middle as humanly possible. Because if you skew off to the right or to the left, you'll cut into your wire and you don't want to do that. Okay, so just like that. As you can see, it kind of bit down into the duplex. That's very good. Then I'm just going to gently push the razor blade towards the end of the wire, making sure I don't skew off to either side. you'll feel it start to bite into the positive and negative wires. You don't want to do that. You want to keep it right down the middle so you cut the duplex kind of like a banana peel. That's the best way that I've found that works. You guys may have your own ways, but this is just the way that works best for me. So make sure you push away from yourself and you don't cradle it and cut the duplex down. I've cut my finger open doing that, and I have a scar on my finger from doing that. So hold the razor blade like this, hold the wire behind the razor blade, and push forward, keeping the blade away from you, because duplex does have a tendency to slip, and you will cut your finger open doing that. So be very, very careful. And just be mindful of being in the middle. It should cut pretty easy if you're in the middle. If you're cutting on either side, it won't be easy. So make sure you're sticking to the middle. Boom, just like that. Okay, so just to inspect it, let's see how we did. Seems like we did a decent job. So we got the wire stripped here. Looks like a nice banana peel. What we're gonna do is we're going to cut the ends of the white coating. Doesn't have to be perfect, just cut it relatively close. And we're gonna do a little trick to kind of clean this up. So right here we have marine grade 3/4 inch heat shrink. This is the same 3-to-1 stuff. I'm gonna cut it in half. And this is just a little like cleanliness trick. You don't have to necessarily do this. This is kind of optional, but I like doing it. So I'm gonna take this 3/4 inch heat shrink, going to slide it over both positive and negative wires, and then halfway in between the duplex coating and our wires. Just like that. So that's halfway, and that's gonna cover up all of that cutting. So now we're gonna heat shrink that down, just to give you guys a closer look. So we got our duplex coating right here. We got both of our wires. It's 3/4 inch heat shrink. Just gonna slide it over everything. And then halfway down, so half the duplex, half the wire. This will clean up the install quite a bit. It'll make it look nice and clean. So we're gonna heat shrink this down and I'll show you how it looks. So as you can see, that is heat shrunk down. Looks a lot more clean of an install. And now we're gonna begin working on the positive and negative posts on the battery itself. Now we're back to the battery. So now what we have to do is we have to put a 5/16 tin copper ring on the negative side. This just goes right to our shunt here. Okay, so got it crimped. Gonna put our 3/8 heat shrink on the 1/4 inch ring. So we got a 3/8 heat shrink down on the positive side. Now we're gonna put a 5/16 ring on the negative side, along with some black heat shrink. I'm also trying this ratcheting crimper here. We've had this one for a while. I'm just gonna play with both. All right, so we got both sides done. Let's hook this up to the battery. Start with the positive first. Also, it's very important that you trip this breaker while you're working on this, just so nothing's live. Just repeating myself again. Now we're gonna take our 14mm wrench. And now the 14mm wrench is specific to this shunt, so you may need something different to take the positive side off if you're not running a shunt. There we go. All right, perfect. This does clear. We got no problems there. That's awesome. I'll be honest, because of our in-hull charging system, this is a little bit of a tight squeeze, but we made it work, and we didn't have to change our install too much. So now that we got that squared away, we're gonna go over to the power link plate. Okay, so now we have the power link plate, and we have a motor plug on there already, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. Let's get this guy out. The plug that we have here and the plug that we're gonna be using is the battery tender plug. So those of you who have been around this channel for a while know that I absolutely swear by this plug. I'm not a fan of a lot of the trolling motor plugs out there for kayaks, especially the ones that you have to push the connectors in and tighten them down with screws. I'm not a fan of those. This battery tender plug here is all ring terminal based. So if you get good crimps on this, this plug will last you a lifetime. It's not a type of plug that can work out on its own over time. You know, buying the right tools, buying the right crimpers, and crimping this stuff down, it will work very well for you, and I promise you that. This plug is a little bit on the pricier side, but I believe it's worth it. So if you want to buy this plug and install it for yourself, there's a few things you'll need to know. Number one, it gives you the directions in the box, so there's no big deal there, but you will need a 1¼ inch hole saw, and you'll need to drill 2 holes. You'll need to drill 2 screw holes, and they do not provide the screws. I'm not really sure why, but they do not provide the screws. So you will need to get some stainless steel hardware to screw this thing in. I just nut and bolted it, and I siliconed the back of the plug. And I did this over a year ago, and this plug still looks like new. So no concern there. And I swear by this plug. So you have 2 posts that you have to tie into. These are 1/4 inch posts, so we already have 1/4 inch rings, and that works great. So 1/4 inch rings there. These will be 6 gauge. The wire that we just put in the hull that we were just working on will go right here. And this side, a piece comes out, and we'll be putting our 8 gauge 1/4 inch terminals to plug this motor into. Basically sit in here just like this, and the wire will come up to the plug. So no major concern there, not a big deal, actually pretty easy. So let's get after it. All right, so we got our wire here now. We're gonna repeat our same process. We're gonna cut the duplex. We're gonna put our aesthetically pleasing heat shrink in between the duplex and the wire. Then we're gonna put our connectors on and heat shrink those. So just repeating the same process again. One little tip, make sure you put your heat guns on the ground. Don't let them rest on your plastic kayak hull. Okay, you're going to need 2 6 gauge 1/4 inch rings, and I'm actually going to put them upside down so they hug the terminal of the battery tender, just that much better. So, and it's less of an awkward angle for the wire to make, because when it's like this, it's going to be a little bit more awkward for the wire, so I'm just going to put it upside down, which totally fine. Now a little bit of heat shrink. This is all set. Now we're just going to do the same exact process again, same exact terminal, but we're just going to use black heat shrink. So I'm not going to show that on camera because it's just the same thing again. But we'll get to you guys when we're done with that. And again, every single connector, really, really yank on it. Do not be afraid to put all of your force on trying to yank it out. Really try your best, because now is your opportunity to really pull on it. And if it does fail, that's a good thing, because you just saved yourself hassle on the water. Okay, so now we are going to hook up the battery tender plug. So this is engraved with a positive and a negative side, so you can't mix them up, positive and negative, and it'll say positive and negative on the other side of the battery as well. So obviously when you're putting it on, terminal first, and then washer, crush washer, and then nut. And then we'll just get them both started so the one doesn't move around while you're tightening the other one. And then we'll take our 10mm wrench and we'll tighten these things down, and then we'll put the power link plate back in the boat. Okay, so that's great. Just keep in mind too with the battery tender plug, it may go back into the boat a little bit funky. You just kind of have to angle it right. Not a big deal. So, okay, let's get this back on. All right, so the boat side of the battery tender plug is done. Now let's do the other side. All right, so next up we have to work on our 8 gauge power cable that came with the Garmin motor. So we're just gonna plug this thing in right now for the sake of it. This is a locking connector, so it just locks in, and then it should make a little click just like that. So that's plugged in. Now we have to run this cable to go right to our battery tender plug. But what we're going to do is we're going to zip tie up the wire a little bit and just kind of have it resting. So now we are going to cut these leads off entirely because we don't need them, and I'm not a fan of them in general. So we're going to cut them, cut, and cut. I don't love these like open style terminals. I think that's just an easy corrosion opportunity long term, especially in salt water. But this is 8 gauge wire here, so we are going to make up some new connectors, some 8 gauge 1/4 inch tinned copper lugs here. We're going to attach these on just like we did our battery tenders that were 6 gauge, and then we're going to attach them to the battery tender plug. So let's do that. We're going to just strip and crimp. Okay, good. These are tinned copper as well. They're not pure copper. Awesome. Okay, that's number one. And repeating that same process again. Number two. Okay, it's number two, both are crimped. Okay, now let's get some heat shrink on these guys. Let's get these heat shrunk down. All right, so that is hooked up. That's hot, ow. Now, in order to get the motor side of this plug situated, we do have to undo it. Just unscrew it. Feed both of these through. And then now we have to get these lugs on the post. Same thing on the negative. Now we're just gonna take our 10mm wrench and tighten both of these down. The battery tender plug is a little funky because it's gonna feel loose, but it is completely tight to the post. Make sure you tighten it down to the best of your abilities. All right, so that is all situated. Let's get this. All right, so we're gonna work on the cable management right there. We'll just clean that up slightly. Not a huge deal, but yeah, it'll look something like that. Yeah, so that is it for the electrical work. Let's recap. Okay, everybody, so to recap, here's what we got. We have our positive post. We have a very small 6-gauge marine tinned copper wire jumper here. It's no more than like 2 or 3 inches. We got a 5/16 ring on the battery post, got a 1/4 inch ring on the breaker, have a 50 amp ignition protected circuit breaker here. Again, do not go against the grain on this. Do not pretend that this is optional. Don't be a contrarian. Definitely install overcurrent protection that is properly sized. We have our 1/4 inch ring and our 5/16 ring on the negative side going in 6-gauge duplex wire. Coming over here, we have our battery tender plug. Underneath the battery tender plug is where our 6-gauge duplex goes to. It goes right here. Our battery tender plug has 1/4 inch rings underneath it, so that's what we do. That's where our 6-gauge duplex wire posts are, underneath this. And then the motor plug side is plugged into the Garmin motor and comes right down here to the other side of the battery tender plug, which is 8-gauge wire here. And we replace the terminals with 1/4 inch rings, tinned copper 1/4 inch rings, add a heat shrink to both sides. And this is the motor side of the battery tender plug. And as you can see, we'll show you a little demo here. It twists in and then it locks. So that way you know that it's nice and secure. And as you can see, this looks extremely clean. We are going to work on our wire management a little bit back here, but I'm not worried about that at all. So now I should theoretically see a light pop up on the plug if I trip our breaker. So let's see what we got. Yep, got a beep. And we have a single red light, and we're not done setting this up anyway. So we'll worry about that in a little bit. But yeah, now that we're done with the wiring, let's continue the rest of the install. All right, so now that we got the electrical work done and that's squared away, we are going to begin the foot pedals here. So the foot pedals, again, are an optional feature for this force current. You do not need them to use it, but it does make it a lot more fun to use it. So it's up to you if you want them or not. Just keep in mind, you know, like we said earlier, if you're gonna get the foot pedals, you may run into issues with the pedal drive on this kayak. So you may have to sacrifice the pedal drive, especially with the rudder situation like we talked about earlier. But I'll put the pedal drive in here after we get these installed, just so you can see and make that judgment call for yourself. We have a few things to talk about here. All right, so this is, I believe, the track mounted. Yep, so you can mount these to a track if you want to as well. So we have our actual foot pedal, which is actually a pretty hefty unit. Okay, so this unscrews, got it. So we have both our foot tracks here. Thankfully with the Titan X, we have the holes already made for this. So this is perfect. So you're just gonna unscrew this. And if you don't have these pre-cut out holes for this type of foot pedal, you will have to use the track, which is what this bottom piece is for. Awesome, okay, lines up perfect. I'm just going to reuse the screws that are already on the Native. And you do want the button here. You want this facing towards you if you're sitting in the boat. Again, you don't need to sock these down to oblivion. Just good and tight with a hand tool. All right, so mind you, these are battery powered. The battery life on these things, I believe, is about 1 complete season. So keep that in mind, but you do have a battery slot there. Let's see what size batteries they take. 2 AA's. So you will need 2 AA batteries for each foot pedal. And you'll also need batteries for the remote and possibly the man overboard switch, but we'll see. Okay, so let's talk about these foot pedals here very briefly. I do not have batteries in them yet. We'll pair everything at the end of the video, but I wanted to show you how they look installed and some things you need to think about if you're installing the foot pedals on the Titan X 12.5. So the brass inserts in the hull do line up perfectly for this situation. Garmin did think about that ahead of time, which is very, very good. The one thing that you need to consider with these foot pedals on this kayak is the little lip on the hull, kind of where the catchboard mount rests here. There's a little bit of a lip on the hull. This piece of the metal bracket comes in contact with the hull a little bit. I don't think it's a huge deal. It's not a lot. You can still screw it in pretty easily, but there is some minor contact on that lip of the hull where this metal piece fits that the foot pedal goes into. So be aware of that. I thought maybe we could do a little bit of modification or install some kind of spacer to go in between the brass insert and this foot pedal plate, but I didn't love that idea. I wasn't completely sold on it. So I did also consider potentially doing a track mounted one because I do have the hardware for it, but the hardware doesn't really work for this application super well, and I wasn't a fan of that look overall. So I do believe that this is the best spot for them. Just be mindful that you will have some contact on the hull where the lip is, where the lip of the hull is right there. It's a flat wall. Right here is a flat wall. There's a small lip, and then it goes right back down to the floor. So keep that in mind, but these foot pedals are installed. They look really cool. These foot pedals don't move back and forth like other foot pedal systems do. These foot pedals are completely wireless, so they are battery powered. Again, they will last about a whole season, so no worries there. But it functions very similarly to like a zero-turn lawnmower. You can customize how you want to use the foot pedals, but how I'm going to be using it is this is forward. This would be forward. That would be reverse. And then one or the other way, that would be left. And then this way would be right. And then inversely, you can go backwards on one and then backwards on the other, and that dictates what direction you're going in. So very similar to like a zero-turn lawnmower, but super cool nonetheless. And yeah, we got these installed. Again, we'll pair them all later, but yeah, let's continue. Okay, everybody, so we're going to continue with the install now. At the end of the video, we are going to pair everything, so we'll save the pairing process for the foot pedals for a little later in the video. Now we're going to work on the raise and lower line for this motor. It is pretty simple, I will admit, but kind of the theme of this installation, I guess, is change. So we've had to make a few changes to make this motor work. We've had to change a little bit of our setup to accommodate this motor. Not that that's a bad thing. You know, this is a pretty big install, so there will be some changes to our current setup to accommodate. However, I thought of a lot of it ahead of time, so I have a plan for all of it. So here is my plans regarding the raise and lower lines. So the raise and lower lines are going to run on the starboard side. Obviously, we're going to follow exactly what it says in the manual to do. We are going to run it through the motor, and it needs to go through tracks. The line is going to come over here, and they're going to end here where the cleat will be, where we tie off the handle, and we can actually raise and lower it from that area there. So with that being said, we are going to be moving on from the landing gear. I've been meaning to do this for a long time, honestly. Many of you know we do have a trailer on order. That trailer is expected to arrive between February and March. So that trailer is on its way. It is coming here, hopefully somewhat soon. So the landing gear is kind of redundant. We really don't need it much anymore once the trailer is here. However, I will be purchasing a backup wheel transportation system. We'll be getting a cart of some kind, whatever is going to be on sale, just to serve as a backup to the trailer, because I want to have some type of wheel system always on hand, just in case something happens with the trailer, weird boat ramp, whatever it may be. So although the landing gear is done, it served its purpose. We really didn't have any problems with this landing gear at all. So no real complaints with the landing gear at all. You know, it definitely served its purpose. It did its job for us for two hard seasons of use. So no complaints here, but with this installation, we're gonna be moving on from it, and with getting the trailer, it was time. So what we're gonna do, we are going to have to cut that handle, and we'll put the cleat kind of where that rubber handle is. So yeah, let's get started. It's also looking like there's a chance we may have to remove these paddle holders, but I was also planning on upgrading these anyway as well. So again, I thought about all of these beforehand, so I have plans for all of them. I'm going to loosen up the landing gear. All right, landing gear is off. Another reason as well is we are planning on adding some other accessories like a larger battery potentially, and we were already at the weight limit of these guys, so I just didn't want to risk that. So it was time. So now we have to work on our line here. This line is pretty straightforward to get figured out. We'll get a closer look at it. I also have the manual right there. It's actually a very good manual, I will admit. Okay, so I got the line pushed through this hole here. I'm just going to tie an overhand knot. I think they actually want 2 overhand knots, so I'll make this slightly larger. Perfect. Okay, that's step 1. Now we're going to put the motor back on. Now number 2. Number 2 goes there, and then number 3 goes here. So number 1 down there, number 2 here, and then number 3 through that. All right, so that's through. So now we have to take our little eyelets here and run them across the track. So we have 2 options here. We could either drill them in, which we don't have to do for this installation, but you may if you have a different kayak. And we have these right here. So I'm going to put one as close to the edge here as I possibly can. So the 2 eyelets, the trick here is there's little teeth that you have to put it on the track so it doesn't wobble side to side. I'm going to put the eyes facing towards the middle of the boat, because if I put the eyes for the string on the side facing away from the boat, you might come in contact with your rods if you put a fishing rod in here. So I'm going to have the holes, this hole that the string goes through, facing towards the middle of the boat. That's so cool. Okay, let's get this guy threaded. Awesome. Okay, you know what I'm doing with this. We are going to have to cut this handle. Now, I believe you can get this handle. You can just buy another one if you want to. It's no big deal. I've never used this handle before in my life. That handle or that handle. I already cut that handle for the camera mount that you guys watch the videos from, but this handle, it's gonna go. So look away. I know. Nobody likes me for that. All right. Next thing we gotta do is we gotta install our cleat. So, all right. So just like the other packaging, you have a choice. So you can either install it in the hull, which I really don't recommend doing if you have tracks, don't do that because that's permanent. So the pulley part, this right here, needs to be facing the bow. So the actual cleat facing the stern, pulley facing the bow. We do have to install our sliders here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put them in. I'm just going to get them started. All right, so this is the design that I'm finalized on here. So maybe not 100% ideal with this spring blade rudder drop down cleat here, but I'm okay with it because we can't use the other side since we have all of our recording stuff over there. I'm okay with that principle. So we got the lines run here, and it is much easier to pull if it's closer to the seat. So if it preferably in front of the seat, I think that's the easiest. But all you got to do is just pull and then lock it in. So not too bad. I may play with the actual positioning of this a little bit more. I may move it up forward. I may move it back. Who knows? But as of right now, that's the spot that I like, and we'll play around with it later on. There we go. All right, so a little demonstration here of what we got. So we got the raise and lower lines. I did add 2 Yak Attack eyelets to extend the cable out to here, which I like. So it goes up. I just want to hold on to it so the kayak doesn't. And then just goes right down the eyelet. Then put the excess cable down here. And then open it up, drops. I was a little violent because I kind of just let it go, but my hand would always be on it on the boat anyway. So yeah, so that's the raise and lower lines in a nutshell. Again, you can customize that to be whatever you want. You don't have to do it this way. This is just how I did it here, but yeah, definitely happy about that. Okay, so now we are actually on the home stretch of this install. We don't have too much more to do, but the next part of this video is going to be all the pairing that we have to do. So we have to pair our foot controls. We have to put batteries in the foot controls. We'll need 4 AA batteries for the foot controls, and Garmin recommends them to be lithium AA batteries, not alkaline AA batteries, and change them yearly, get on a yearly schedule with changing them. And that probably goes for all the Garmin accessories, the remote as well. We'll just change the batteries yearly. So we got to pair the foot pedals. We have to pair the remote, which I believe is already done, but we'll make sure because I think it's paired out of the box. And we also have to pair the MOB tag. Okay, so one thing that we do need to talk about when we're talking about pairing here, I can't go the video without mentioning this. The Garmin Force Current is compatible with the newer Garmin displays. The EchoMap series, the GPS Map series, it is compatible with the newer Garmin fish finders and chart plotters. However, it is not compatible with all Garmin fish finders or chart plotters. So, for example, this one right here is the Garmin EchoMap UHD 193SV. This plotter is not compatible with the Force Current. It is compatible with other Garmin Force models that are a little bit older, but with this Force Current being so new, that motor is only compatible with the EchoMap UHD 2 units. So they're newer versions of the EchoMap. With this being an older version of the EchoMap, it is not compatible with the Force Current. I knew that before I purchased it, no surprise there, but I want to hopefully let somebody know who may have this plotter and is looking to pair it. You can't. You would need to get the UHD 2 model, which I'm not ruling out potentially getting some plotter upgrades at some point. Definitely not this off season. Absolutely not. I've kind of reached my limit when it comes to kayak related purchases this off season. I've kind of reached my limit, so we're not doing it this off season. Maybe next off season we'll upgrade a plotter or we'll add a plotter, whatever it may be, to maybe something that's compatible with the Force Current. But just making you aware, definitely confirm the compatibility with your current chart plotter with the Force Current, because not all of them are compatible. But just making sure that you guys are aware of that. Okay, everybody, so we are back. It's been a couple days, kind of just got busy, but we're back at it now. So we are mostly done with this install. In terms of the install itself, we're mostly done. But we have a few more things to do, and that is pairing all of our stuff that we have for this motor. First, we're going to pair the foot pedals. We already installed these earlier in the video. It is very easy to pair these. First thing that we have to do, obviously, is put batteries in it. So the batteries that Garmin recommends is lithium AA batteries. You'll need 2 for each foot pedal. You'll also need 2 for the Garmin remotes, so 6 total AA's. And I recommend these right here. These are Energizer Ultimate Lithiums, 8-pack of AA's. So we're going to be using these. These things work at extreme temperatures, and they tend to last a very long time compared to traditional alkaline ones. So I'm just going to unscrew both of these foot pedals. There's a little hatch back here that we have to open up. Okay, so just twist, and it pops right out. So it's 2 AA batteries. 2. And put the cover right back on. And then we'll repeat this on the other foot pedal, and we'll get right back to you. It's just the same thing again. So there was a green light that popped up, just confirming that it is powered. I'm going to show you how to pair these really quick. We have to turn on our motor here. So I'm just going to plug this guy in. And there should be a couple lights that pop up. There it is. There's one. And we're going to wait a second for the other ones to pop up. Give it a second. Okay. So now, we're going to hit the power button 3 times, rapidly. And we're going to come over to our foot pedals and repeat that. And just, yep, there we go. So we had the blue light and now the green light, and that side is paired. So now we're going to repeat the process for the other side. 1, 2, 3. And then come over here. Come on. Blue light and then green light. There we go. Okay, so now the foot pedals are paired. And now the only red light that we have is for the MOB tag. So we're going to do that one last. Next, we're going to do the remote. Okay, so theoretically, the remote should already be paired. I did hear something that it was paired out of the box. So we should not need to do anything, but we'll confirm for you on video here. Take our 2 batteries. We do have a Garmin logo on our remote here. I'm just going to take the plastic off so you guys can get the satisfying. There we go. Okay, so it does look like it is paired. Yep, it's turning. So as you can see, when I turn it, it turns with me. So it won't let you do anything unless the MOB tag is connected. So that's the next thing that we have to do here. But this remote is already paired. So the remote is paired out of the box, and I did throw this floaty on there too. This remote may float, but I don't feel like risking it, so we're going to put this on there. It does give you an option to override it, but I don't recommend doing that. That man overboard tag is a super easy and simple safety feature, and to actively avoid it is just a needless risk. So do not override that. We're going to get the MOB tag paired now. So in terms of where I'm putting this MOB tag, they give you 2 options. They give you a carabiner style, and they give you like a wristband style for like a watch band. I'm actually going to be using the carabiner style mounting option, and I'm going to put it right on my life jacket. I think that's the safest place for it. That's the best place for it because it just promotes safety. I cannot stress enough the importance of safety and the importance of wearing a life jacket. If you're not wearing a life jacket, I'm not going to ever take advice from you, plain and simple. It just promotes good practice of always making sure that you have your life jacket. You know, you can't run the force current without it, or at least safely, you can't run it without it. So by having the life jacket, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You'll always have your MOB tag, and you always have your life jacket. So I'm going to put it right on this little carabiner slot here, and probably forget about it. So that's great. Okay, so next up is pairing the MOB tag to the motor. So you want to make sure that the remote is on for this. You don't really need to mess with the remote much, but they do want you to have it on. So I'm going to press and hold the power button on the MOB tag. The light should flash. Just like that. Okay. So now I'm going to hit the power button 3 times. Okay. It's hit 3 times. The light is flashing blue. Now I'm going to hit the power button on the motor 3 times. Now that light turned blue, and now it should turn green in a second. There we go. It just turned green. It's flashing, but now it's going to be solid. Okay. And on the remote here, it does say system ready. So that is paired. Now we're going to throw it on our life jacket, and that's it for the MOB tag. good to go. And there are batteries for that already in the MLB tag. All right, everybody. So just to show you guys that we are done pairing everything, I'm gonna move the remote around. And you can go in reverse. So it is instant reverse. So that's reverse. That's forward. And it is full 360 turn. And it'll kick you back. And that's forward. So on Garmin's website and in the manuals online, there is a bunch of information on what these do. So just to show you guys a quick little rundown of what each button does, and this will be very fast. So right here, you got your power button, cruise control, top here. This button puts the prop to full speed. This is Garmin's manual control for the steering. So if I press this button right here, it's got a little like M on it. I can actually point the remote where I want it to go, which is super cool if you ever need that. This turns the prop on and off. This is your turning, so forward, backwards, left, right. Heading hold, anchor lock. So I see this question get asked quite a bit, is how is anchor lock going to work if it's in the rear? A lot of people only ever see anchor lock in the bow, so it's a natural question to ask if they don't understand stern mounted spot lock. Spot lock motors, regardless of where they are placed on the boat, will always point towards the wind or towards the current. That's just always how they've been. So try to think of a rear mounted spot lock motor holding you the exact same positions that a micro power pole would hold you. Think of it like that. It would be pretty much identical to how that's positioned. So the motor itself is always going to point in the direction of the current or the wind, regardless of where it is positioned on the boat. So try to think of it that way. Anyway, so you have your menu here for the remote. You have the ability to mark a waypoint on a Garmin plotter or fish finder, and then these 4 keys here are keys for your fish finder if you have it paired. Again, since we have the EchoMap UHD 1 model, we cannot use these. If we decide to upgrade a plotter or add a plotter at a later point, we will be able to use these. That is it for the pairing process on everything here. I do want to show you very quickly how the foot pedals work. Okay, so unfortunately, without a second camera in this garage, I can really only show you what the motor does while I mess with the foot pedal. So I'll tell you what I'm doing, and you guys will be able to see it. So Garmin does have information on 2 separate modes on how you want to use these foot pedals. You can use it in 2 different ways, but I'm going to use it how it is out of the box, which is like a 0-turn lawnmower. So this should work right now. I'm going to put both the foot pedals in the forward position. That's forward. And now backward. That's backward. Now I'm putting the port side foot pedal forward. And now that should go back. And now I'm putting the starboard side forward. And then now opposite. So backwards on the port side pedal. Backwards on the starboard side foot pedal. So that's a general idea on how they work. Again, you do have 2 modes for that. So if you want to look into the other mode, you can definitely do so. But that's a general idea on how the foot pedals work. Okay, everybody, home stretch here, folks, I promise. One thing we are going to do here very quickly is, since we installed our raise and lower lines on this kayak, I am going to add the Yak Attack double header paddle holder. The reason being is because we did lose our paddle holders on our boat that were there previously. So that'll work. I'll probably have it something like that, I think. Yeah, that will work. Maybe not the most ideal solution in the world, I will admit, maybe not the most ideal, but it works, it does its job, and this is a perfect solution until we find something a little bit more permanent. But I think for now, this will do more than fine. I don't think we'll have any problems with this. And if we get out into the season and we realize that how we do it right now doesn't work, we'll just change it. It's not the end of the world. This is a perfectly fine solution until we find something a little bit more permanent. So yeah, that's what we're doing in terms of paddle. Before we end the video, I did want to talk about a few more things. Number one is, how prepared is this Titan X 12.5 for a Garmin Force Current? This kayak was produced and the mold was made before the Garmin Force Current hit the market. Compared to something like the Bonafide XTR that had the Garmin Force Current in mind when it was being made, I did want to talk for a second about how this Titan X stacks up. So if the Bonafide XTR in terms of compatibility and fitment is like a 9 out of 10, I think it's pretty fair to say that the Garmin Force Current on the Titan X 12.5 is kind of like a 6 out of 10 in terms of like seamless fitment. And the reason I say 6 out of 10 is because of a few reasons. The good. Number one, the mounting is already here and ready to go for this Force Current. The bolt holes do line up. They thought of that ahead of time, which is very, very good. Number two, the in-hull battery storage works fantastic for this situation. Number three, the power link plate right here works fantastic for this situation. Since you can run your power in the hull and protect it better and have it come out this power link plate right here. Number four, the foot pedals. You do have the pre-cut out brass inserts for foot pedals, so you don't have to do any drilling or mount them to any tracks. So I like that. So those are the major pros I can think of for this installation. You do have a lot of track space as well. You have adequate track space to be able to do an install like this. So there's a lot of good there. However, the things you need to be aware of. Number one is the fitment with the rudder. So like we said earlier in this video, if you want to use the Force Current to its full capability, as in full 360 rotation, you will come in contact with the rudder if it's straight up and down. If you put the Force Current at a pretty significant angle, you can just make it work, but that's not quite what it's meant for. So keep in mind, if you do keep this motor dead straight like it's supposed to be, you will come in contact with your rudder if you keep it in the regular position, not the dropped position. So keep that in mind. We decided to remove the rudder, but I understand if that's not for everybody. So just keep in mind with that. Another thing too is the compatibility with the pedal drive. I'm actually gonna bring the pedal drive over here right now and we'll show you. Okay, so I got the pedal drive here, and just to show you guys how the fitment would look, because I would probably be looking for this information online too. And there we go. So as you can see, it clears, it does clear, but not by much. It's a pretty tight fit between these foot pedals and the Garmin pedals. Again, it does technically clear, but you need to be very careful with how you position your feet, because if you have a relaxed stance on these pedals and you're kind of just nonchalantly pedaling, you will hit these Force Current pedals. My thoughts on this again. If you are adamant on wanting the Force Current for this kayak, you can very easily do it. It is definitely doable on this kayak without a doubt, but be prepared to make some changes on how you do things on this kayak. If you really want to retain the pedal drive system on this kayak, I don't recommend buying them with the foot pedals and just using the remote. Reason being is because you'll probably run into some clearance issues, especially if your feet get any relaxed and they start moving side to side, you're gonna hit these pedals. If you keep your feet perfectly straight on the pedals, maybe you'll be okay, but in my opinion, if you want to retain the pedals and you want the Force Current, I would not buy the Force Current with the pedals. If you want the foot pedals and you want to use the Force Current to its full capability, you will probably have to remove the rudder. So keep that in mind. That is something to be aware of with this Titan X. It is a very doable install, but it is not a completely seamless install. You will have to change some things on how this kayak is operated and how you fish out of it. It will take a little bit of change, but I do think it is worth it. One more fitment note too is if you are a landing gear user, you may run into some small issues. Now, we were landing gear users. We used them for 2 complete seasons, but with this Force Current motor, this was my excuse to move on from them. I liked them. They did their job well. I had no issues with them, but we were at our limit of what we could handle with the landing gear. And since many of you know, we are getting a trailer this off season for this kayak, the landing gear was pretty redundant. So I do have a cart as a backup coming. So that'll be a backup only. That won't be a primary wheel system that we use. We are going exclusively trailer this off season. So that's my opinion on this installation on the Titan X 12.5. While it is definitely doable and the mounting options are there and the battery options are there, just be prepared to make some changes to how the kayak is operated in terms of the rudder, in terms of the pedal drive, in terms of landing gear. Those are just some Fitment notes that I don't see people talk about at all. So keep that in mind. Okay guys, so one more quick thing and then we're gonna do the outro here. So some of you might be asking, what is next for this Garmin Force Current on this channel? So we live in the New England area, and as many of you know right now, it is the middle of winter for this area. It is consistently in the 20s and 30s. You know, most of the ponds are pretty iced over. There's like 6 inches of snow on the ground. So unfortunately, we will not be able to try this Force Current until the maiden voyage of 2026 and in the start of the fishing season, which will hopefully be around late March, would be best case scenario, would be our first fishing video. And in that video, we will be going on the maiden voyage of this Force Current. We will be trying it out for the first time. We will also be going through the calibration process on this Force Current as well. So while we are done with the installation, we still have to calibrate everything. And of course, we have to get used to it and practice with it. So that's what that main voyage will be all about. All right, everybody, that is going to officially do it for the longest video in this YouTube channel's history on installing the Garmin Force Current on this native Watercraft Titan X 12.5. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope it helped you in some way or provided you with some insight. Thank you guys so much for watching. The fact that any of you take time out of your day to watch these videos means a lot to me. And if you stuck around for the whole thing, thank you. That means a lot. So I tried my very best to go as in-depth as I possibly could with this installation because there's a lot of misinformation floating around and a lot of things that I can hopefully show people to steer people in the right direction. And I definitely feel we did that with this one and provide a lot of context to a native Watercraft Titan X install. There's a lot of installations on different kayaks, but at the time of recording this, I haven't seen any on the Titan X 12.5. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, a lot of hard work went into this video. So if you enjoyed or it helped you, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel out in more ways than one. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. And we will see you guys with this Force Current later this year. Thank you.